Hello, welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy, and I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. And today I'm going to talk to you about another film that I believe is severely underrated and one of my favorite films in its filmography. And that is Zodiac, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr., with also Brian Cox, which follows the story of the hunt for the Zodiac killer in San Francisco through um, through the California Valley, not San Fernando, during the 60s and 70s. And I remember watching this for the first time. The film, rented it on DVD, and it surprisingly I was drawn into it. This is not your typical mystery film directed by David Fincher, and I would say this. It's one of those mystery films that keeps the mystery going, even towards the end. And the way that it's directed, the way that it's set up, that you're given the introduction, where you're given some characters that encounter the Zodiac killer and they're wounded, and then it transitions to Jake Gyllenhaal's character living his life and working at the newspaper in the article, um, where they cover the news of a shooting of the Zodiac killer. Robert Downey Jr. also works there, and it kind of like it's like a series of adventures, of a series of just events of the Zodiac killer making its impact through San Francisco, and then these characters, how they're dealing with it, how they're trying to figure out a way to expose the killer, see if anybody really cares for it. While also you have Mark Ruffalo's character, the police officer in charge of investigating the serial killer, tries to find ways where it leads to no um, where it leads to loose ends of trying to find the killer. And the film chronicles these characters for years, even to like a decade, of seeing how their lives, I guess, deteriorate. See how people lose attraction for the Zodiac killer, especially there's a moment in the film where the Zodiac killer doesn't really do anything for a while. It disappears, and it's a series of events that lead up to these characters and how this personal case of deception has impacted their lives, and for the worse. Some of them move on, some of them health declines. It's mostly kind of like just chronicling these three principal characters. And I like how David Fincher directs this story, that for a segment of it, like Jake Gyllenhaal doesn't really, he's in the film. I mean, he's like the lead, but he like doesn't really fully shine his character. He plays a cartoonist for a newspaper, and he gets invested wanting to know more about the Zodiac killer, which he kind of wants to investigate it himself. He wants to be useful and accept just being a just typical just cartoonist. So the more the news about the Zodiac killer kind of emerges, the more he becomes invested, the more he becomes obsessed with it, to the point where when he meets, gets married, when he has kids, it takes over his life pretty much. Not a good way, where he starts to lose friends, attract people that he cares about. You see that deteriorate from also with Robert Downey Jr.'s character, who becomes drawn into the world, but his life gets taken from the worst a little bit, where he's kind of just persuading, well, Mark Ruffalo's character, or just even Mark Ruffalo's character, trying to figure out if the police department, do they really care about trying to pursue and stop the serial killer. And it's really fascinating when these three characters kind of interact. Mark Ruffalo's character, who's freaking good in here. Mark Ruffalo is an underrated actor. Like, watch his previous work. He's phenomenal in this. There were times in there where moments of the film where, and this is what I like about the film very much, that there's chunks of the film where it focuses on certain characters for a time, and then it like slowly kind of just like there's a point where it focuses centers mostly a little bit on Robert Downey Jr.'s character a bit, just him dealing with it, and they just have certain actors there just to kind of retaining information, learning, trying to put the pieces together regarding the Zodiac. Then you have Mark Ruffalo's character, who's pretty much takes mid to third way of the film, um, or I would say midway, where he's kind of like the main star in the midway of the film, where he's trying to, um, solve the case of the Zodiac killer. Then you have Jake Gyllenhaal, who feels like everybody has given up on pursuing the Zodiac, and he becomes obsessed with it to where he, starts his own investigation without the law, without really anybody else knowing, except for his family, maybe. And his wife actually sees how obsessive he is about it, and it also kind of might him put it in harm's life that the Zodiac might also try to get him, come after him. There was a lot of obsession going on about this film, but you see how it's impacting their lives. Uh, what I also really like about this film is that how stylistic and noir detective this movie feels. Um, like I have to give it a lot of credit. Like this is probably his most David Fincher's. I would say his most. I don't know. I would say his laid back mystery film, but there's a lot of downtime watching Zodiac. I mean, it hooks you, and then you have this serial killer kind of like chase that goes along for the first hour of the movie, but then it dims back because once the Zodiac killer's news dims back, then time of pursuing the killer also dwells back. Then the characters start to dwell back, except for Jake Gyllenhaal's character, who becomes so obsessive after everybody else is moving on. And I think the theme about this film is about people moving on. There's people who become obsessed with it, and with such a tragedy like that, you just want people are just trying to forget their encounter, or just trying to forget something like that. Um, what I really liked how the film ended. I like how the film ends. To be honest with you, like I like how it ends to where you center right back on the character from earlier in the film, which is years later. It's like it takes place from like the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s. So it spans like 4 decades. And that was interesting. I like how just time kind of like just gets people to move on. And there's always going to be a mystery or something. You can be so obsessed about something, but never solving it. It drives someone literally insane. I love that aspect about it. But the guy comes back, and then he points out, and there's a certain actor in there that they kind of give you the impression that he plays the Zodiac killer, that he is the guy, and it gives this chilling vibe to the ending because there's these um like this aftermath that tells you what happens. Like you have one of the witnesses that the guy points out ends up dying, unfortunately, which now they couldn't really point out who the actual Zodiac killer is. You have certain characters that die from other circumstances or try to move on, living their life. And it just gives this eeriness that the guys could still be out there. Now, given that it's been years, decades, times move on. I'm sure Zodiac killers passed. been gone, dead, or whatever. But I like that feel to it. It was a very different mystery film, and it doesn't get talked about a lot. I'm surprised how much money it made. It didn't really make a lot of money. Um, and there's actually an extended cut. I think about maybe 5 to 7 minutes to it. I haven't seen the extended version, unfortunately. For those who have, please let me know um, if there's anything different about it. I just know that there are new scenes in the film, but this film might be my favorite David Fincher film. Actually, second favorite David Fincher film, second to Fight Club. Comment below, let me know if you have seen Zodiac. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about it. Would you recommend it? Please, I recommend this film, especially if you're looking for a good mystery film. Like, subscribe, and let me know what is your favorite underrated movie.